Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting from Prince George, the capital of Northern BC, on the Brink. And my guest today, a special guest, is Erica McLean. And Erica is from Northern BC and from the Gitxsan. Did I say it correctly?
The Gitxsan, yeah.
Yeah, Gitxsan First Nations, and that is west of Prince George. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up on the territory of the Gitxsan First Nation in Hazelton, BC, and I spent the first 19 years of my life here before moving to Prince George to study social work at CNC and UNBC. And growing up on the reserve in a small town of a couple of thousand people, it gave me such a strong sense of community. Where I always felt that being in this small community, I had everything I needed.
Yeah.
And it was such a strong connection to the land and the people around me.
Yeah.
And as I grew up and worked my way through high school, I started to realize that what comes with life on the reserve is that sometimes you can see the people around you struggling in different ways.
Yeah.
Whether that be poverty, because reserves are often remote and smaller. And
so where is this Gitxsan community? Is it?
This community is
close
several
by?
hundred kilometers northwest of Prince George. So it's very close to the ocean in Prince Rupert. It's about 300 kilometers from the ocean.
Is it further north than Prince Rupert?
Only no.
No.
We are mostly west.
So what is that the closest community to it? If you go major shopping, then we go to a big city.
Yes, that's very interesting actually. So the Hazeltons, which is where the Gitxsan territory is based in, you actually have to travel about 45 minutes to Smithers if you want to go grocery shopping or Terrace.
How many kilometers?
About 80.
Yeah.
And then Terrace. So you do have to make some sort of trek to access.
About an hour by car, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And is Hazelton and Smithers are all part of the Gitxsan First Nations?
Yes.
Yeah, territory, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then, so you were there, your family was there, and then you got siblings?
Yes, yeah. I have 3 siblings. We're all quite separate in age. So
cool. Boys?
Yes, I have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister.
Are they still at the community?
Yes, for the most part. I do have one sibling that had moved to a bigger urban center, had moved to Vancouver, actually. But for the most part, yes.
So one of the things that I read about you is that you already were quite involved in the community, and even then in your younger years, and had this special feeling or talent for working with young people, and because growing up at the best of times can be a challenge, and then in First Nations in particular, in the smaller, more isolated communities, is even more of a challenge.
I think when I was a teenager, I started to realize that I became aware that there is need out there. And around that time, I started to kind of figure out who I was as a student and started to develop a little bit of direction. And to be totally honest, I had some big pie in the sky dreams. I wanted to be a sports doctor for the Knicks.
Good.
I wanted to go to a sports school in Australia. But of course, as you know, it's so important for a young person to dream. So I started to have these. I started to visualize and idealize what my life was going to look like as a teenager, which was exciting. But all of that was really rooted in learning how to help people. I just wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And so that was that voice. And to this day, it's still that voice. It just has evolved greatly over time.
Now, you were going to school where when you were living in the community, was high school there as well, close by, or did you have to go to Hazelton or Smithers?
Well, actually, I was quite lucky. As an adult, I've learned how difficult it is to access secondary education for some students on reserves in BC, and I'm sure across Canada too. But no, actually, I was quite lucky. So Hazelton, or the Gitxsans, we are actually situated in an incorporated city. Was developed during the pioneer times when people would come and make their way from up the Fraser River or up the Skeena River through river boats. It was incredible. And you think about these raging rivers that these people would come and navigate and access, and then eventually build a railway. So it was incorporated and it was settled. So this is a small town. In
the early 1900s, likely. So,
yes. Late 1800s.
Yeah.
And so it slowly developed over time, but it has always been a small incorporated town. So I was very lucky in that sense that I could walk to high school.
Yeah, amazing. Eh? And then so now you were 19 and you decided to go to the big city, Prince George.
Oh, it absolutely was the big city.
Yeah, by comparison then, yeah. And so you went to CNC?
Yeah, I studied...
College of New Caledonia, right?
Yes, yeah.
Major college really in northern BC, and it has all kinds of satellites through the communities in the north, right?
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to add to, like, an incredible, like, accessible space and platform for students who, like me, come from small communities and really want to access post-secondary education, but also want to remain small, small class sizes, small campuses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you took then, what did you take? Community health? I chose social work. Like I said, when I graduated high school, I had one goal, which was not super defined. It was to help people, essentially. So naturally, that social work just became the easy decision. Yeah. But actually, so I finished my time at Focusing in particular on the Indigenous community?
That was the intention, yes. And I would say, is still actually a fairly large focus for me today. Yeah. But it's evolved again, and I realized that there are many of us out there, Indigenous, who are vulnerable and who could benefit from that internal narrative that we are capable, we are strong.
Yeah, all the positives, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what did you? So you went to CNC for how long?
Oh, it was a 2-year program, but
then what did you do from there on forward?
So then I could transfer to get an undergraduate degree, like a bachelor's degree. Yeah. So from there I went to the university here, the University of Northern BC. Yeah. Yes, and I completed my undergrad degree there. Yeah. And started working in education.
As a teacher?
No, actually, so there's a number of support positions inside schools, and that was one thing. So something that was really meaningful along the way was realizing that, because while I was doing my education, I was working inside social services, within that world. And I couldn't help but feel a little bit disheartened that, and I would say to myself, like, I'm getting there too late. Like, I want to reach people before we get to that crisis point. And, in the social work world, that is often the voices that we are intervening at crisis levels. That's the work itself. Yeah. And I was like telling people this story, how in my third year, we did a ton of presentations, as I'm sure in any undergraduate degree program, but I had declared in front of my cohort that I know what I want to do. I want to be in prevention and early intervention. And my instructor said, that's great. You know what you want to do.
Yeah.
But you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it just doesn't, it's different.
Yeah.
And that's not, that's not often the world that is social work.
Yeah. And I'm just going to mention that, I wrote 3 books, or I'm working on the 3rd one. The first one we briefly talked about that, Against All Odds. And then the other one, I'm going to give you a copy about it, ADHD Unlocked. But the other one that I'm working on is, and you can relate to that, is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And that's precisely about the things that you're talking about, that if you're so lucky, not you, but you in a general sense, to find something that you would love to do, then even if it is, as you said earlier, if it is a broader social work as such, of working with people and being helpful to them, younger and older, whatever they may be, and then kind of focusing in on that and becoming good at it, and especially if you like it and give it all you got, which you do, then I say you're living the dream. And I do that in a way because my dream always was to go to Canada, was the one, because they liberated us April the 12th, 1945.
I remember the story.
Yeah.
It sounded very scary.
Yeah. And then the other part was my dad worked in the lumber industry and didn't own something, but he was managing something. And my grandfather was a master carpenter. So for me, growing up in northeastern Holland, my destiny was I would be in the lumber industry, and I loved it. And so that when that happened, I wanted to go to Canada. It was my dream already from the time I was 5 years old. And then I developed the other dream of not only going to Canada, but going to British Columbia and building my own lumber mill. And, and so that, my own life, as well as I've heard so often, talking to not only younger people, but also people that are middle-aged or wherever in their life, and you talk to them and they say, I hate my job. And I wish I would have done something else, or my dream was something different, and and I never did that. And then unfortunately, it will affect everything that you do, the relationships that you're in, the people that you are part of your life, and on the same time in the book we interview a number of people that made career choices and then changed them even at the time that they were 30, 40 years old and never looked back, So it's never too late is the point, to find that passion, and then obviously objective is to living the dream, right?
Interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because it reminded me. So the first thing I realized about you and I is that we share a commonality, or at least one, a large one that I know of. I think we're both like relentlessly optimistic people.
Yeah.
And you alluded to that, or claimed that in your writing, which right. I feel to a great degree the same way.
Yeah.
It's that while your vision might change over time,
right.
or the goal might evolve,
yeah.
it's the methods are still there.
Exactly.
You still have those same principles, those same intentions,
exactly.
And getting there, we're just flexible on. And I think that comes from being that optimistic person.
No question about it.
It's so fun. And then you were speaking about your writing, I once read this really funny book. It was a great TED Talk. It was called Why You Will Fail to Have a Great Career.
Yeah.
But it was about being passionate in your work.
Yeah.
And what the line that stuck with me the most in this book was that people who care deeply about their work they're not going to set rigid guidelines about start times and end time because the work itself really is personal.
Exactly.
And as you might know, I resigned from my education position just this past year, and now I find myself working all kinds of odd hours throughout the day, but that's my methods have changed. But
you love it though,
and the vision is still it's still there. It just looks different.
Yeah. And then the other thing, Erica, that's why I have thought this. The thing is actually, I'll show it to the camera here. It says it shows 2547. You know why that is?
I think so.
Yeah, because that's what I had in my pocket when I came. I counted it 3 times: every nickel, every dime, and every penny. $25 and 47 cents. And then the other thing underneath it, even more importantly, is attitude, passion, work ethic. What follows is success. And I deeply believe in that as a foundation, for every day. Then usually what I say is I usually get up at around 5:30. I always make my bed.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you had a morning ritual.
Yeah, okay. I do. I make my bed, and then before I get out of the bedroom, I kind of look back and making sure that it's all good and straight, and then I go to work, and then from there on in, seldom I'm a perpetual optimist, and if it rains and I want sunshine, I'll swear it's sunshine tomorrow, no question about it. And then I count ourselves so lucky that we are living in this amazing country, Canada, this amazing province, BC, and then northern BC, a land of absolute beauty and just an amazing place, so, and we are so lucky.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Going back to this.
Yeah.
I bet you remember, what were your thoughts when you were looking at, how much money you had? Do you remember what you were thinking?
I was going to build a sawmill. There was no question in my mind. I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know a soul. I didn't have a job. But I got a job that same evening. I needed to go to work, and I found a fellow that had a Dutch background, and just luck, because it was July 1965, that I had a Dutch heritage, and I couldn't speak the English, and I talked to him, and he said he's going to help me find a job, and that was the immigration office here in Prince George. And then he couldn't find a job for me in Prince George because I wanted to work that evening because I had obviously a cash flow problem, the lack of it. And, and he found me a job piling lumber in Quesnel at Wellwood of Canada. So I thought, well, okay, that's good. I took my suitcase with 2 books in it, or 3 books in it, and a set of clothes. And I thought I'd just go to the bus and take the bus to Quesnel. Well, it doesn't work that way here. So there was no bus, so I went to the highway and hitchhiked to Quesnel and the guy asked me, where do you want to go? But I don't speak the language, so I told him Greyhound Station, because that's where we stopped on the way up. And then I called the personnel manager from Wellwood of Canada there that found me a place to live, and then I went with my suit that evening, piling lumber, with my suit, my white shirt, my tie, and my jacket. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The whole mill, including the plywood plant, all came down and watched this crazy guy piling lumber with his suit on. I took my tie off at the first coffee time, actually.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
But why did I do that is because there is something else that was lying underneath it. The dream, obviously growing up during the war, which was not easy, when we were under occupation and a lot of things happened. The hunger winter from 44 to 45 was very, very difficult, and obviously seeing much more trauma and pictures that we should not have seen as young kids. And then the other thing that happened to me, I was not overly successful in school. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they had to make a decision as to what would I be doing now, because after the third time they said, well, you know, it's not going to work out, so we'll maybe send them to the mentally challenged school, or we get them a job. Now, fortunately, they got me a job, and as a furniture maker. And then, you know, but I always kind of felt that I had failed in a way, and you know, and although I was still very optimistic and happy-go-lucky, but I always felt that I had failed in, you know, not having formal education. And I felt I had to start over new again. And starting over new meant when I left Amsterdam or Schiphol on the airplane, I had $150. And by the time, you know, I arrived here in Prince George, I had $25.47. But the whole idea for me was I wanted to start off with no money, starting right from the very, very bottom. Hence, the $25.47, you know. So.
You wanted to start that way.
Yeah, from the bottom up, to prove to myself that I could do it. But I didn't know then, and it took me, I was 24 when I arrived in July of 1965, and it took me 33 years up to the time that I was 57, that I stood in this bookstore here, and Books and Company, and I opened a book and it said, Driven to Distraction, and it was about ADHD, and I said, now I finally know who I am, and I wrote that in it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, and I didn't know, never heard of ADHD, and you know, already then I was working on a mill, building the mill, starting from the bottom. But what am I going to do? Tell the banker I got ADHD, maybe a mental disorder of some sort? So I was ashamed of it, and I was not very public about it until much later, obviously, you know. Hence I wrote a book about it as well. I'm going to give you a copy of it.
Awesome, thank you. I really appreciate that, and I think that is one powerful feature of leaders in leadership, is that you have the capacity to be vulnerable. But I imagine that probably comes after so many hours, right? Of putting in that effort. Yeah.
And I think, you know, you read the Against All Odds. And Against All Odds, I always say it took me, I never wrote a book in my life. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. But I wanted to make sure that I did it well. And amazingly, even with grade 7, I'm a good writer. And now we know that that's not unique to being ADHD, you know, of being very good at a number of things. I call it the superpower now, obviously, but you know, but when I wrote the book, I wanted to make sure it would not be a book that was, say, hurrah, hurrah, John, but it was, you know, with all the challenges and all the adversity and all the things that you have to go through, if you stay the course, you will succeed, you know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love, and this is probably one of my favorite things about studying and observing leaders, is that everybody fails in some capacity and multiple times over their lifetime.
It's part of succeeding.
But what actually stays is that the person keeps coming back or finds ways to evolve and pivot beyond those barriers.
Exactly.
Interesting. I think what I really appreciate about your story is that, especially with woodworking, you speak so passionately about woodwork. And one of my favorite authors wrote a book called "Stillness is the Key," and after
what was it called?
stillness is the key.
Okay.
I'm a big follower. I appreciate his work in Stoic philosophy,
Right.
because I agree that these were such valuable practical lessons for, humans to just help navigate life and our challenges. So I hit a point when I was working in education, and I was just under this stress that I can't describe, where I wasn't sleeping well. I knew that I needed to learn how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And reading this book is it's a lot about that place where you keep your hands busy. But actually, it's it's those tasks where you are moving your body, you are using your hands, but your mind is free. Your mind is free to imagine, to create, to reflect, to meditate, all of those things.
Right.
And that's immediately what I thought of when I was reading some of your writing on woodworking, especially because you had felt like, okay, what am I going to do now if I can't finish grade 7? I'm going to go work on this thing.
Right.
And it just it reminded me of that place where I started to. And for me now, that looks like doing work in my yard, or that means putting in my headphones and going for a run, or going to my garage gym. But just that space where I can actually have that time to reflect and be creative.
Yeah, and especially what I found is, when the more I got to know about ADHD, and the more I started to understand it, and the more I started speaking about it and then writing about it, there is not a day, Erica, that does not go by where somebody says to me, my son or my family member or a friend in the area, in my community, has ADHD, or is struggling with it. I always give them a book. The book has been doing extremely well, and what I'm saying is that ADHD is so common, but it's not limited to ADHD. As we know, there are numerous people that are, because of whatever reason, a lot of times exposure to trauma doesn't make somebody, a give it everything kind of a student, difficult to be in that kind of an environment. Mm-hmm. It's important for them as well. It has nothing to do with how bright or smart or all the other things. Nothing to do with that. It is simply the structure as we know it, where we are sitting in schools for 4 years or however long it takes. Some people just are not made for that, and have different ways of learning and getting to know how to go about that and feel good about themselves. And I believe even now, it's all evolving as we speak in that area.
I agree.
And that's a good thing,
And I think being able to, especially for like our world where we kind of grew up in, this was, here is their mainstream. Everybody jump in and we're going to go in this direction. But with technology, with the way our world has developed and changed so much, we need to be able to give space to students like that. And I'm thinking of students when you're speaking, because it's the ones that we want to give hope for, right? That
exactly.
There's space for you here, who you are as a person. And these are, what might look like a deficit here is actually, a skill over here.
No question about that. Yeah.
And I think, you're giving space to people who need that.
Yeah.
And I think, somebody once said that leaders are dealers in hope, and it's something that I refer back to often as I hope and work towards becoming a leader. But it's something I see you doing in this work as well. It's that trying to create space and opportunities for hope. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially looking at the positive aspects of all those things, right? So often it's easy to say, well, I can't do that because of this, that, or the other things. It's not so. it's totally in your control. I try to avoid the negative, and I always search for the positive, and I always look around and saying we're so blessed compared to a lot of other things that happen in the world, So, and that's who I am,
It's so interesting you say that, because I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to mention that at some point today. I was going to say, like, John, by now I've met a few members of your team, and I'm realizing, like, you are surrounded by some really positive people.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we are.
I'm sure that's by design.
Yeah, the positive attracts positive, right? So people love to be positive, and so what we do, regardless what the challenges are, and there are challenges, we always find the positive way, and then whatever we do, we try to do well, So even at I'm going to be 82 November the 1st, so, and that again is just a number. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
I heard you have a competition coming up, don't you?
Yeah, mid-November.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Are you
positive?
Prepared and?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Now I don't know this. Have you done bodybuilding competitions before?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started training actually, Erica, in 2009. Why? Well, why? Is that in 2008 I nearly died because I got diverticulitis and it ruptured. You know what diverticulitis is, no? It's I would say if you have pain, it says the left side or right side. If it is the right side, it's probably your pancreas, or no, how did you call it? The thing that they cut out.
Your appendix.
Yeah, appendix. And then if it is at the left side, it could be diverticulitis. So then you go to the doc. Usually what they say is, with the diet. I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling what I believe. They say is that they suggest you eat more greens, and then that will help. With me, what happened on the Sunday, on the weekend, actually, I was in Victoria. We have a place in North Saanich, so, and
wow.
And my wife and myself were there, and then I work in Prince George, go there for the weekends. Anyway, so then I got pain in my side, and not good for me. I have a fairly high threshold for pain, and what seldom happens. On Sunday I stayed in bed. I never do that. And then the following morning at 5 o'clock I was catching a flight. I thought I have to get back to Prince George. I still don't know how I made it, through the airport in Vancouver. Usually it was A gates and C gates then, not anymore now, mainly at the C gates. But it took me about 6 minutes normally to go from A to C, because I'm in a hurry.
Okay.
It took me 20 some odd minutes, and I had to hang on
Wow.
to decide. I thought if I go on my knees, somebody will call 911. And I came to Prince George, and then I got operated on by Dr. Locke Nathan. He's my neighbor actually here. Okay. I've never seen him, but apparently he is. And he saved my life, because it had ruptured and already had been 48 hours.
No.
Yeah, and that's about the window, because the toxins from there attack other parts of your body.
Okay.
And and he more or less said to me, "You came very, very close," and so then I took it serious. It was not making the commitment at the end of, which we usually do around New Year, and saying, "Okay, my commitment this year," that kind of a thing. And a week later, you never go back. So in any event, I started to go to the gym in earnest. I got a trainer. I made it an appointment, and I went to the gym. And and then initially, gyms can be embarrassing places to be for somebody that doesn't have much confidence in themselves, because every time I went down there, and every time I looked around, I see all these perfect bodies compared to me. I'm overweight, and I go to the equipment. I don't even know how to sit on it. And they're all watching me, I think, but they're not. Everybody's doing their own thing. Anyway, I stayed the course, and then, you know, after about 5 years, 6 years of training, and, you know, they said to me one day, they said, "You ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I started kind of looking at it and kind of flexing, and they said, "Okay, yeah, awesome. Maybe. Who knows?" Gives me a goal, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so then I started competing in 2017, I think, and then first locally, and a bit of a challenge because there were about 400 or 500 people in the audience, all from Prince George, and I'm standing there in my little Speedos and, you know, so flexing and doing all that kind of stuff. But I came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique in my group. That qualified me for the province. No and way. I came third and second there. That qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds.
No way.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. So, and then after that, you know, the COVID came.
Oh, okay.
And so 6 months ago, I started training again. You know, I have Kendall Kershaw is my trainer, and a fabulous lady, a good friend. Actually, when I was competing in the provincial, I sponsored her as well. She was the youngest one to compete in her group. She was doing bikini or something like that. She was 17, and I already then was 77. So I was the oldest, she was the youngest. And, you know, in her group. And but she's training me now, getting ready for competing again mid-November. And then hopefully I will place there and gets me to the nationals and back to the Arnolds.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that makes me physically the whole oldest competitive bodybuilder.
I'm sorry, yeah. That's so exciting.
Now you're an athlete too, because you know you were the athlete of the month for Brink.
Which was so awesome, by the way.
The Brink Group, because we do that every month for the last 4 or 5 years. We always select those unique athletes that are doing such an amazing job and are below the radar somewhat, and we try to take them and showcase them and then show them on the media in terms of, you know, because each one of them are giving a lot to what you were doing, and you were doing CrossFit at the time, and tell us a little bit about that.
Which I love. So I walked into a CrossFit gym. Well, actually, I'll go back a little bit.
Tell us a little bit. CrossFit is doing a whole lot of things, and it's very, it takes 120% of you doing all kinds of different things, right?
There's so many variations, and I think that's why I love it so much, is that it can look so different every day. I could work on my conditioning. I could work on my metabolic conditioning, where I'm doing tons of burpees and tons of pull-ups. Or I can focus on Olympic lifting and maybe more gymnastics. Like there's just so much variation that, and I think that's why I love it and why I've stuck to it so well. But initially it wasn't even any of those things. Well, I'll tell you, it was 2 things. So I've always loved basketball and soccer.
Right.
I love to run as a teenager and a young adult. Like I've always been athletic, I'll say, because I'll go in 2 or 3 month spurts and then fade away and get back into it. But CrossFit was like the one thing, and I started when I was 25, which is just about 10 years now. And I walked into the gym and I see people doing things that I know I can't do. So I thought, like, oh my goodness, I'm terrified, I'm self-doubting, like all kinds of things. All these thoughts are going through my head. And then people, I come to do my first workout, and several, not just one, but like several people came to shake my hand and welcome me to the gym and say, hey, glad you're here.
Friendly environment, right?
Yes, So it was really the community, which is something that, so every affiliated CrossFit gym, so they can call themselves a CrossFit gym.
Right.
They have to pay an affiliate fee to be a part of the CrossFit, the
Right.
broader community.
Right.
And that's always the goal of CrossFit HQ, is to build community.
Yeah.
So that was one feature that really stuck with me. But the thing, and this is something that I actually took with me, because I am a CrossFit level 1 trainer now. And through my own personal experience and doing the training, I worked in high schools with kids,
Yeah.
especially young women.
Yeah.
And that is something that I refer back to often, is that it is so important for us to feel strong.
Exactly.
And to do the things that make us feel strong.
Yeah.
And sometimes for a lot of young women I work with, it's like, hey, being able to do a pull-up,
Yeah.
or to be able to move a barbell.
Inspirational. So you're now a teacher, and you resigned last year. So tell me exactly what you. And then there's another thing that I want to talk to you about
Sure.
as well. You somehow chose to say, I'm going to be a politician. Not, and you're running for School District 57.
Trustee,
Yeah, October the 15th.
Yes, yeah.
Whole new experience for you.
It is 100%.
Yeah.
So I was an educator, and honestly, that's where I spent the majority of my working life. Essentially, it was in School District 57, working as an educator.
Yeah.
So I was a support person with the Indigenous Education Department, and then my role shifted to what is called, it's not a very well-known role, but I was called a community school coordinator, and the role was to provide after-school sport and art programs to students, particularly with a focus on higher needs students. So the intention was really to create connections and identity building within, especially our vulnerable learners, to their broader community.
Yeah.
So I did that for a long time. And then, like we've talked about a couple of times today already, that, the intention of helping and, supporting people, it's still there.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it was actually this past March where I started to have the conversation with myself, saying, I really think I need to find the next step. I need to do this.
Yeah.
So after I did that, and I kind of, dealt with it and with my family, I had the support of the people around me, and, took the leap to resign from after almost 10 years of working in education. And what the goal was to really find a different way to help some of our most vulnerable people.
Right.
And in schools, that meant our most vulnerable students. So when I left in June, the intention was to finish my book, work on getting it published, and then potentially start an athletics clothing line to go with that. Because to me, helping people build that narrative, or, that narrative that that we're strong, we're capable.
Exactly.
I could do that writing a book. I could do that with creating a brand.
Right.
But then the idea was presented to me. Actually, you can also do that as a trustee too.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where we are. And I filed my paperwork, and I'm now in the running for general election in the city of PG.
The 15th, right?
Yes, yeah. Advanced voting is actually this week too, on Wednesday, Thursday, but we have some advanced voting opportunities this week, next week, but the general election is less than 2 weeks away.
You have an amazing amount of experience, throughout the community in northern BC. You were born here. Indigenous knowledge and connection is a real asset to you, but over and beyond that, in terms of your exposure to the school system, younger people, and you're an excellent communicator, obviously, and you're an amazing athlete altogether, all about that. Now, before we go, tell me a little bit about your book, and is it done?
We are so close. So I'm actually going to self-publish. I have decided to to take that route.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to talk. So I have a local northern BC photographer, somebody who I actually went to high school with.
Okay.
Is a fantastic photographer, loves to run in the mountains, like just, yes, northern BC, like that. So that's, you know, that's somebody who I want to help create this for me.
Okay.
And a local art teacher in a high school is going to recreate that picture like with an artistic view. So once I have those two things in place, then I'm going to work towards, so it's not like the writing is done, but it's all of those final pieces that I'm working on right now.
So I want to make a deal with you. I'm going to give you my books. Already you have the one.
Yes.
I'm going to give you the other one, ADHD Unlocked. I'm going to sign a copy.
Thank you.
Only if you commit that you will give me one of yours too.
Oh, for
I know
sure.
you will do that. You know?
I'll give you 10.
Yeah, no. I give you 10 too, because once you have seen it, and especially in your environment where you know so many people through the school system and all the other ones, that anytime you feel that somebody should have a copy of this book, no matter how many, you know, we make sure you have those. And, you know, we covered a lot of ground, and, you know, and I was absolutely delighted to, obviously I've known you, but we didn't really meet
I know, we
before
finally
this.
get a chance to talk.
Yeah, and we want to stay in touch, and you know, and then you know, I love what you're doing, and I obviously love the spirit and the positive. So
Thank you.
Erica,
I appreciate you.
It was my pleasure.